Okay, in the previous task, I mentioned some procedures call other procedures within there. Okay, and this is the kind of example how they are calling each other. First, let's open worksheet number 2 and open Visual Basic and open the second module, so kind of second playground. Okay. And let's make our modules in there, subroutines in there. There are 3 of them from our lecture note. Okay, and when you see this, the first one is a subroutine with title Z with some inputs. So please understand, previously whenever you define the name for any subroutine, we usually didn't put anything in there, right? It's kind of open. But now it has, or it expecting an input there. And what this subroutine do is, inside the message box, it just produce that stuff, right? Whatever that is, right? So please understand, Z is just the name of this subroutine, but what this subroutine do is it's expecting certain inputs in there, whatever it is, and what you really do is just produce that one inside the message box. That's what this one do. So let me run this one at this moment and see what's happening. So again, you have to choose X and Y and Z. Okay, because this one doesn't do anything right now, right? So let me cancel it, because short time is over there, right? And it doesn't recognize private. So let me explain this one first. When you run it, it's asking what macro I want to run, but in here I have only 3 choices: short time, X and Y. Okay, then look at here, I have X, I have Y, and I have short time in other modules. Okay, and these 2 modules is inside this workbook. So when I try to run it, it's actually try to pick all the possible submodules, right? But it doesn't include short time 1. Why? Because it's private, and this subroutine is inside module 1. But when I run it, I was in a different playground, module 2. So it doesn't recognize this private subroutine in that case, right? That's the one thing we cannot see it. And in here, why it doesn't recognize this one? It only recognizes X and Y, because this is a kind of generic function, right? It's a subroutine titled Z, and Z expecting some inputs and produce that inputs inside the message box. Now we don't have anything there. It's just definition, like f of x equals x, like that, right? So this Visual Basic doesn't know how to do that, right? Because there is no values actually is given. Okay, so instead of that, let me run this. This subroutine titled X doesn't start with anything, but it's calling that subroutine, right? So this is the command to call other subroutine, okay, other procedures. And now this is public, so you can call this one from other playground, right, other modules, or within that same module, of course, and call this Z. But once again, whenever you want to call Z, you have to give some kind of inputs. Okay, it's expecting that, right? So you cannot just call just Z. It doesn't do anything that. So at this moment is ABC surrounded by double quotation mark, which means this is a string, and that is the input, right? Then we call this subroutine, so it's only one line, but you can imagine this whole subroutine is placed there with only that part is changed, right? A is changed to this ABC. So what this one really do is running this subroutine in here. So it's going to produce message box of that information, right? So inside the message box, you are going to see this. So let me run this. Okay, Can you see that? It produced message box and it produced ABC. Of course, double quotation mark is just telling it's surrounding the strings, right? So it's only accept the string part, not the double quotation mark part. Okay, so that's the one. And this one looks a little bit different, right? So let's run what this one do. It's exactly the same thing. So instead of calling and Z and that, it's just simply Z with that. Then it also understand what does it mean. But personally, I prefer to using this one because it's really following what is given, right? Okay, so that's how this one do. Now let's look at the very similar example again. Let's open another module, another playground, and copy the code from lecture note. Okay, we have two procedures. The first one is called show sum, and it produces message box, and inside the message box we are going to see this sum number 3,5. Okay, and the second procedure is titled sum number, and be careful, it says it's a function. So this is how we define or how we make our own personal function within Visual Basic. So you could give any name for your function, and this part tells whether it's a one variable function, two variable function, or n variable function. Okay, depends on how many variables you put in there. We're expecting two inputs for this function, so it's a two variable function, and what this function do is just adding that to numbers. So when you run this subroutine, it produces message box, and within the message box you are going to see the results of this function when these two values are 3 and 5. So that's it. So once again, when you run this, it doesn't understand because it's just a function, it's a general one, so it doesn't know how to handle that, right? So you can only handle this one. So when you run it, it produces 8, the sum of 3 and 5. So if you change this number, you are going to get different answers by that, and you know how we can handle any function we want within the Visual Basic by this.